I'm the CEO of the Luncheon Chamber of Commerce. Welcome to today's luncheon, highlighting the two candidates in the race for the U.S. Congressional District 6 seat. We are glad you have joined us today. At this time, I'd like to ask Justin Kaufman to come forward. He will offer the invocation and blessing of the food we are enjoying. Justin is the founding senior pastor at Harvest Hill Church and a member of the Midlothian City Council. Justin.
Good morning.
Good morning.
What an honor it is to be in the same room with all of these great community leaders. So I just want to, before I pray, I just want to thank you for your leadership in our community. I was thinking about the word leadership this morning. This is what preachers do when they get a microphone. They talk. I was thinking about leadership this morning, and a leader is one who can unite people to get together to push forward for a common cause. And all of you are doing that. And then I was thinking, what is the opposite of a leader? And the thought of a follower came to mind, but it's not a follower. The opposite of a leader is someone who comes against and creates disunity for what the leader is trying to accomplish. And so I want to encourage you as leaders to fight for unity, because there are those out there attempting to come against what we're trying to accomplish as a community as we try to create unity for the common good. And a lot of times the tool that they use is politics. Politics divide, but leaders unite. So be a uniter. Would you be a uniter?
Yes.
Sorry to preach at you this morning. Let's pray. Father God, we thank you for the opportunity that you have given us to lead. Lord, we don't take that mantle lightly. God, we thank you for these two wonderful people who are attempting to lead us. Lord, we thank you for the sacrifice that they're giving of their time and their family time and their giftings. And Lord, we just thank you for Mr. Ellzey and Ms. Wright. God, I pray that you would just anoint both of them, Lord, that you would just speak through both of them today, that they would have clarity of mind, clarity of speech as they share with this crowd what they are all about. Lord, I pray a blessing over the food. Lord, I pray a blessing over the Chamber of Commerce, all the business, all the school district, all the city, all the government that's represented here today. Lord, you bless each of these leaders for their time. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Wow. Let's put unity in our community. Preach on. Okay. It is important that we continually pray for not only our elected officials, but all of the professionals that work on behalf of Midlothian's residents and the business community. We are honored to have elected officials and dignitaries with us today, and it is my pleasure to introduce them. As your name is read, please stand. We will ask the audience to hold your applause until all of our special guests have been announced. First, we have, with the City of Midlothian, Mayor Richard Reno. You've already met Justin Kaufman, council member, Hud Hartson, council member. There he is. I have Doug Hunt on here. He had to be somewhere else today, so Doug is with us in spirit. Midlothian ISD, our school board representative today is Andrea Walton, and we're honored that our new superintendent of schools, she'll lead this dance so you all can know her, is Dr. Joanne Fay. Did I miss any elected officials? Thank you so much for being with us today. Our community is great because we have great public servants working on behalf of our citizens. It's my pleasure to publicly thank the Chamber's key volunteers and leadership. Today's event was organized by the Chamber's Legislative Affairs Committee. The volunteers who helped me with this are Chair Ross Weaver, Donna Crimmins-Bonnell, Doug Hunt, Jason Jacobus, Andrea Walton, and Tori Caves. That's my committee. Thank you guys for helping me organize this today. And finally, if you are on the Chamber's Board of Directors or an ambassador, will you please stand and be recognized? Thanks to all these volunteers. Your Chamber of Commerce succeeds by offering the best possible customer service, resources, and information to our members. Please help me now thank your Chamber staff. Judy Bates, your Membership Director. Mary Beth Bartlett, your new Special Events Manager. And Rachel Cruzon, your Summer Intern. Where's my team? Well, Mary Beth is in the room. Rachel is leaving, and I suspect Judy is. Oh, Judy's help him with the food. That's my team. All right, today's event would not be possible without our presenting sponsor, Ray Foundation. We thank you very much to former State Representative John Ray and his wife Michelle for sponsoring our event. We also appreciate our VIP sponsors. They are Access Self Storage, Gerdau, Lafarge Holcim, and Greg Wilhelm Law Firm. And finally, our corporate sponsor is Caliber Voice and Data. Please join me in thanking all of our sponsors. And now, I'm pleased to introduce our MC for today's discussion. Andrea Walton, as you know, is the owner of State Farm Insurance and a member of the school board for Midlothian ISD, among many other hats that she wears in this community. And you've heard that she's a member of our Legislative Affairs Committee, and she's going to lead our discussion today. Andrea, do you have your script, or do you want me to leave mine up here? Okay, we're set. Very good.
Thank you, Laura. And thank you all for being here today for some very important dialogue. Here's how this is going to work first. We're going to have some beautiful introductions with our two candidates, and then we're going to have question and answer. If you look on each of your tables, these little note cards are there and some pens if you don't have an extra pen with you. If you have any questions that come up that you think of, Donna, here in the
Where's Donna?
right there, waving to everybody. She's going to run by and grab any questions that you think of that you'd like to write down. At the very end of our question and answer portion, we will ask any if time's available, we'll ask any questions from the community here. She will consolidate and remove any questions that have been asked, but as we go through this process, we're going to go in a round robin format. So first we'll ask the question to the first candidate. They'll answer for 60 seconds. I'll have a minute to answer. They were given the first round set of questions. The second candidate will have 30 seconds to clarify, expound, or differentiate any answers. When we get to round two, we'll continue through the round robin, and then we'll include any questions that you've written down at your table. So thank you all for being here and being part of this process. At this time, I'd like to introduce Jay Cruson with Caliber Voice and Data, so we can introduce our first candidate.
All right, I hope everybody's having a great day and some great food. I appreciate the chamber putting this on. John, thanks for sponsoring this event. That's great. So I want to say that the first time I met Susan was at the First Look 25th annual fundraiser. So for those of you who are know about First Look, it's a very important charity for our community, and basically what they do is just such a great job of supporting life. And so, I really appreciated her coming out and supporting that community and basically showing that she is a woman of God and that she supports life. So that was a great way to get me, her and her husband, who was there as well. So Susan has been focused on making a difference in our community. She served on lots of different committees, and one of those is on the Arlington Transportation Advisory Committee. She's been on the Fort Worth Development Council, the Tarrant County Crime Commission. She was the district director for 2 state representatives. She's been a precinct chair. She has served as a state Republican Executive Committee chairwoman, and many more. So she's been Susan is dedicated. She's been a dedicated lifelong Republican who proudly, along with her husband, I messed that up. Sorry about that. So Susan Wright's a dedicated public servant, a lifelong Republican, who proudly, along with her husband, the late Congressman Wright. I did it again. But anyway, you guys did the message, right? So she's running to preserve her husband's commitment to bring conservative values to Washington. So Susan is a leader. She's committed to strengthening education, cutting property taxes, securing our border, improving public services, tax reform, supporting Texas jobs and economic growth, increased border and immigration security, and a strong national defense. So she's been endorsed by some great folks, some in our community. Midlothian City Councilman Hud Hartson has endorsed her. The Midlothian Police Association, retired Lieutenant Colonel Alan West, the 45th President Donald Trump, and as of yesterday, Senator Ted Cruz. if you guys would join me in welcoming Susan Wright.
Thank you, Jay. And now I'd like to ask former State Representative John Wright and founding partner of Ray Willett and Stoffer to come forward and introduce our second candidate.
Thank you, Andrea. Thank you everyone for having me and for this very important event. And sorry to be stranger here, Susan. It's my honor today to introduce Jake Ellzey, our current state representative. And Jake, his staff was gracious enough to give me some comments to read. However, I do know Jake very well, and I'll probably just shoot from the hip a little bit. I guess it's Sarah Palin was saying about the road. But Jake is a native Texan. He grew up out in Perryton in the Panhandle. He felt a strong calling to service, so he attended the U.S. Naval Academy, after which he received his commission in the U.S. Navy. He served 20 years in the U.S. Navy as a fighter pilot. He had 5 tours of duty. 4 of those were air tours of duty, and 1 was on the ground. It was SEAL Team 5. He rounded out his career in the Navy as the air boss of the USS Ronald Reagan, one of our country's aircraft carriers. And of course, in that position, he was a leader of a group of sailors and service members who were defending our country. After retiring from the Navy, Jake moved back to Texas. He moved to Ellis County, actually here in Luncheon. He brought his wife, Shelby, his lovely wife, Shelby, and his 2 children, Jack and McCall. And Jack and McCall attend school here in Luncheon ISD. Jake became a small businessman here in our community. He was also appointed to a couple of public service positions by Governor Rick Perry. He served on the Texas Veterans Commission. 2 years ago, let me see, what is it? This is 2021. Actually, last year, Jake ran for state representative and was elected to that position. He now currently represents House District 10 in the Texas House of Representatives. That would be all of Ellis County and a portion of Henderson County. Jake served in a very successful session, his past session down in Austin, helped pass a number of critical pieces of conservative legislation. I'm very proud of his record. I got to know Jake back in 2013. He had been only there for a short while. He and I both ran for the same position back in that time, and we became friends through that process. And I'm very proud and honored to call Jake Ellzey my friend, so I hope you'll welcome him here today. Thank you.
Thank you, John. I do want to point out today that this is not a debate. This is a conversation and an opportunity for each of them to share their perspective and different viewpoints. And then at the end, we'll ask the candidates basically just to focus on their issues in these questions. So again, we're going to go through a round-robin process. Please write down any of the questions that you might have. And instead of the very official rock, paper, scissors to see who goes first, I'm still bored, and my passion is students. So, of course, as congressional candidates, they are in charge of our federal dollars. So I'm going to ask a trivia question so that we can understand. Here in Midlothian ISD, what is, and just raise your right hand when you know the answer. So you guys tell me who answers it first. What is our percentage of special education population? Okay, Ms. Wright?
13.7, between 13 and 14%.
Jay?
13.9.
Okay, there you go. They are both very, very clear on where we are with special education. So for who goes first, are we back to rock, paper, scissors?
All right. 2 out of 3 or 1? Okay. Yeah.
So starting off with our first question, I'll share with you that these were submitted by our legislative.
15 minutes.
Pardon, Laura?
She gets 15 minutes.
15 minutes. You're back.
Okay, I just want to be clear. We're going to do an opening first and then questions?
Correct.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
We'll go round robin.
I thought it was another test. Well, good morning, everyone. I'm Susan Wright, Thank you, Chamber, for hosting us. Thank you, everyone, for being here. This is a big crowd. I don't know if you stood from up here and looked out, but there's a lot of people here today. I'm Susan Wright. I'm a public servant. I'm a retired federal contractor. I'm a grandmother and all the other family things. I'm a Christian, and I'm running to be the next member of Congress to represent you from the 6th District of Texas. And I'm doing that because it's important to me to take our Texas values and our Texas way of life to Washington. We know here how well that works, and I want to push that agenda in Washington. And I believe that I have very, very strong credentials to do this, from my public service, civic engagement, my political background, and my professional experience. So, volunteer work, I've volunteered for a number of different organizations. I'm very honored to have been part of the Neighborhood Association. This was one of my first engagements in civic engagement. Way back. I was a new homeowner, and a developer was coming in with some development that we didn't like. And so, like many other neighborhoods, we organized, talked to developers, successfully resolved everything. But that was my first foray into civic engagement. And the group asked me to be the president, served for a number of years at that, and I was proud of the work we did. After that, I was appointed to serve on the City of Fort Worth Community Development Council. That committee is appointed by the mayor and city council, and we advise on the HUD dollars that come to the City of Fort Worth for community development block grant monies for low to moderate income and at-risk populations within the city. And so we went to the entire city and listened to those neighborhoods to see what was important to them, what their priorities were, what their concerns were, what had been done before that they were dissatisfied with, and what they really wanted to see from us. We took that information back through work sessions. We developed I guess you would say a draft budget is what it was called. Took that back out, asked for comment, came back in, used the feedback to fine-tune it, developed a budget, did public hearings, took it to the city for final approval to the city council. I chaired that group for 2 terms. I'm proud of the work we did and the improvements we made in people's lives with their tax dollars to use it as efficiently as possible. I was also asked to serve on the Tarrant County Crime Commission because during our neighborhood involvement, we had community policing was begun in Fort Worth. That was in the 90s when gang crime was a big deal, and that was a new thing, was community policing in Fort Worth. I've been active in that, and I had done well enough or not well enough. Sometimes you wonder, when you get some of these choices and positions. But I was a strong supporter of our law enforcement, and I am today. So they asked me to serve on the Tarrant County Crime Commission. We were a liaison between the neighborhoods and the police and the city council. We get crime trends throughout the city, but most of what we were there for was to strengthen the relationships and foster the positive relationships between the community and the law enforcement. And I'm real proud of the work that we did there. And then I volunteered with a number of organizations for homelessness, for food pantries, obviously for life. And throughout each of these things, I have grown in my love and respect for the people in my community, and it's been our home for me and for all of our family. Our kids and grandkids are all there. We're strong supporters of schools. All of us are. Our family. We're devoted to our church and the committees that we work on there. And we're devoted to improving the community that we live in. Professionally, I've had a number of jobs. Like most everyone, you take the best job you can get when you can get it right when you're in high school. But I've had the privilege of working in banks. I worked for a school district, for a mid-sized school district, in the administration office. I've worked for a defense contractor, but for most of my adult life, I've been a federal contractor who was tasked with training air traffic controllers in the DFW area. And I did not train the controllers, I did the contract administration for it. And so I started as a data entry clerk, but I worked my way up over those years, so that at retirement, I was the administrative oversight person for this region of 28 facilities. And that entailed making sure that the contract compliance was appropriate, the reports were done, that we met the federal regulations, and whenever anything was changed in Washington, we made sure that the training materials were updated here at the local facilities, and that all that's documented. Much like pilots, Jake knows this, there's tons of technical training, and it all has to be documented constantly and constantly. Controllers do the same thing. So there's an entire world dedicated to the paperwork piece of it. That's what I did, and I was proud of the work I did there. After I retired, I had the fortune to go to work as a district director. District director is a really nice title, but there's a million things that go with it. So I directed the outreach for the district, meetings in the district, constituent work, casework, correspondence. I was oversaw the intern program that we had in the district, like the one in Austin, and I was really excited to work on the Texas Armed Services Scholarship Program to coordinate all the applications, conduct the first round of interviews, and schedule those for the representative, and then of course he would make the final recommendations. So through all of those, I've got a history of doing the work and rising to leadership positions to lead a team for successful outcomes. And I think that that will bode very well in Washington for me to be your representative. I'm committed to bringing conservative views from here, just like we live, common sense views to Washington. I believe in strong national security. I believe in strong border security. I believe in supporting our police and our law enforcement 100%. I believe in strengthening our education, strengthening our kids' opportunities, and I believe in individual liberty and local control. My political background, I think, will be very useful in this. For 25 plus years, I've been active in the party. I've been a strong, loud voice on conservative issues at the local level and at the state level. I've worked through a number of different legislative sessions with both state House and state Senate members on various bills that were part of the legislative priorities. We now have that formalized within the party, but at the time we didn't, but we still pushed for them. I've been elections judge and precinct chair, so election integrity is very important to me, and I know how to do all of these pieces. So, as your member of Congress, I will put all of this experience to work for you and be your voice in Washington. And finally, I want to leave you with a couple of things. I'm really proud of my endorsements. I worked hard to earn those, and I'm endorsed by President Trump because he agreed that I was going to be the strongest one to fight for his America First agenda in Congress. I'm really honored to have earned the endorsement of Senator Cruz to stand with him to rebuild our economy and bring our Texas values to Washington. And Councilman Hud Hartson and Commissioner Paul Perry have endorsed me for my commitment to local control and standing to keep your taxes low and fight for your individual freedoms here at home. And I'm endorsed by a number of other local officials here statewide and all over the district for my commitment to standing up for you, for working with you and alongside you to improve the community around us for your and all our benefit. So I'm Susan Wright. I am running for this seat. I'm a proven, dependable, conservative voice, community leader, and I'm asking you to put your trust in me to represent you in Congress. I will never let you down, and I will never fail you. Thank you.
Thank you all very much. First of all, thank you to the Chamber for hosting this forum. I hope it's the first of many in this very important race. Before I forget, though, and I've done it before, Shelby, thank you for everything, my love. Without her, none of this happens. Without her taking care of our home and our family, none of this happens. Throughout this session, she worked tirelessly. She always does it with a smile on her face and with the love of God in her heart. And she keeps on loving me. Thank you very much. Thank you to the sponsors for hosting this today. This is the first time we've had something like this in over a year, when the world stopped last March of 20. And it's good to see everybody here again. You kind of forget how nice it is not to look at people on Zoom and instead shake their hands, see a smile, see a twinkle in their eye, maybe even hear a laugh or two that's genuine because you told a joke right in front of them. It's priceless, and I hope this kind of thing never happens again. 7.9 billion people live on this planet. 7.9. China's first, India's second, we're third with 350 million. Of those 350 million, 27 million live in Texas. Of those 27 million, 200,000 live in Ellis County. Of those 200,000, 40,000 live in the city. I can't think of a better place to live. and raise my children than right here in Midlothian, Texas, and I'm so proud to do it. I'm going to tell you a quick story on the heels of Memorial Day, which was just a couple of weeks ago, Flag Day, which was yesterday, and the U.S. Army's 246th birthday yesterday. Going to get the veterans in the room and their spouses to please stand up. They are always in my heart. On April 6, 2007, in Fallujah, Iraq, our last day in country, a young man by the name of Clark Schweber went on an operation with SEAL Team 4. They were our sister SEAL team while I was there in Iraq, providing air support for SEAL Team 4 and 5. SEAL Team 5 used my services very often because they knew that air support overhead, when a bad guy hears a jet flying overhead, he's going to keep his head down, and he ain't coming out to play. SEAL Team 4 had a different view of my services. They chose not to use them as often. In case any of you know any SEALs, and I know some of you do, they know what they're doing and they like to do it on their own. On this particular night, they went into a house. This house was occupied by terrorists who somehow got a hold of a Marines AR-15 or M4 and his night vision goggles. Clark Schweber was 3 weeks shy of his 28th birthday. He wasn't married, didn't have any children, but he had 2 parents who loved him deeply. Clark gave his life for our country and our Constitution on that day. For that reason, I wear Clark on my wrist every day, and I carry him with me every day. The reason for that is, anytime I do anything, I want to glorify God, my family, my country, and the veterans who are living and have passed for what they have served for. Because when they take that oath, they take it to support and defend the Constitution of the United States every day. They do it in faraway lands in Africa, Afghanistan, Iraq, all over the world, and in places you don't know about, nor do you ever want to go. I've been to those places. None of them are better than this country. The things that I see said about my country, by my countrymen, in the media, and on the other side of the aisle today, are unconscionable. This is the finest country that has ever existed. And it still is, and it's only getting better. So to watch us be torn down from within is something that I can't handle. And I'll push back against that every opportunity I get. At age 7, I was a child of divorce. Like so many in here, it's very hard on the kids. My mom married a fantastic man named Carlos. Papa took me flying when I was 8 years old. And from that point, I was hooked. And he instilled in me a love of aviation, but he also imbued with me, as my whole family did, a love of service to our country. From that point on, all I wanted to do was serve our country in the military and fly airplanes as a private pilot. So everything I did from that point on was built towards service to my country and a career in the military. Everything I did in high school, everything I did in junior high was to get an appointment competitively from a congressman to the United States Naval Academy. And I did so from Bow Bolter in 1988, for which I'm so blessed. So since July 6th of 1988, some 33 years ago, I've been under oath for 31 of those 33 years to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. That is a lifestyle for me. It's a habit that I won't break. It's at the very core of who I am. So once I graduated from the Naval Academy, I wanted to go fly jets. But like so many of us in here, I haven't always been successful. You fail, you get back up again. I went through flight school. They said, you're going to fly helicopters and you're never going to fly anything else. Never tell me no. If you tell me no, I'll get right back up and come at it again. So I flew helicopters, did the best job I could. And then I got transitioned to jets, for which I'm eternally grateful. And on my first deployment flying F-14 Tomcats on the USS Enterprise in 2001,
We were done with our deployment. We were headed south. We were in the Indian Ocean. And the first real call to duty came on 9/11. As I watched the second plane hit the World Trade Center. And I said to my friends in my room, we are at war. Because the call to duty didn't come when you want it to. It never does. Life happens when you're planning on something else. I was there to deliver the first rounds of ordnance on Tora Bora against bin Laden that first night of combat in November. It's a night I'll never forget. I had some near misses in my life too, for which I'm deeply grateful. Before that happened, we were on a night mission. We were flying around the ship. We were doing simulated bombing over Afghanistan, over the water next to the ship. And I bobbed out at 50 feet over the ground, going 500 miles an hour. That was my first miracle. So I'm deeply grateful for that. Clark didn't survive, but I did. I remember that every day. So the call to duty has been something for me that I have done over and over in my entire life. And all I've tried to do is attain sustained superior performance in everything that I do. So I flew all kinds of jets in combat missions, in the ground, in the air, in Afghanistan and Iraq. We did tsunami relief in 2005. We went through the nuclear cloud in 2011 on the USS Ronald Reagan. I commanded a fighter squadron of 12 aircraft worth $1 billion and 250 young men and women going out in combat every day, and they came back home every day. I was in charge of 650 people as the Air Boss on Ronald Reagan. Brought them all home on the most dangerous flight deck and job environment on the planet. So service is all I've ever wanted to do. I did come back home, and before I went to Iraq, I got engaged to my beautiful bride, married her when we came back. I didn't think I was going to stay in the Navy, but I got the call to stay. Commander Fighter Squadron was Air Boss on Ronald Reagan. And then when I finally retired, we didn't have a job. When we came to this place, found 10 acres, our little slice of heaven, and this is where we decided to raise our children. So no matter what happens in my career, no matter what I do politically or business, this is our home. This is where we're going to raise our kids. Dick all when expected to come a couple of years ago. I did run for office against John in 14, and we became good friends. That's how I run. That's how it's supposed to be run. So when the call came a couple of years ago to try it again, I did. And I hope I've made you proud, because everything I want to do in the legislature, strengthen our schools, make sure that they were not held accountable to what happened during COVID, strengthen our First Amendment rights, making sure the CRT is taught in our schools here in Texas, strengthen our Second Amendment rights, making sure that you have the ability to raise your kids as you see fit. That was something that I did in the legislature. And then the call came again. And I chose to run again. And I did both. And I hope I did those to honor you in a way that you would feel that I did appropriately. So now I'm on for Congress. So let's take a 30,000-foot view of what's going on in our world today. As a pilot, let's take a step back from our planet and look down on it. The southern border of our country is a wreck. The people who are coming in are not coming in from Mexico. They're coming in from Guatemala, El Salvador, Nicaragua, Central America, and they're allowed to go all the way through Mexico. Let's fast forward over to the South China Sea. The Chinese have 57 more major ships than we do in our entire Navy. We have our meat industry and our oil industry attacked by cyber attacks from Russia and China. India and China are at war. COVID shut down the entire world, and much to the chagrin of the media over the last year, it came from China, and they know it. We've shut down the oil pipeline, Keystone Pipeline. We've shut down ONWAR, oil exploration. We're now importing oil from Iran. We're importing oil from Iran, world's largest state sponsor of terror, because this administration is on glide path to have 400 executive orders this year alone, which outnumbers any president in history, a 50-50 Senate, and a House where they only have a 5-member majority that's acting like they have a mandate to overturn what this Constitution is. I didn't fight for that, neither did Clark. I'm asking for your vote and your support to send me to Congress to make sure that Clark's life wasn't lost in vain, and we follow the Constitution as we go forward. Ecclesiastes 1:9 said, there's nothing new under the sun, and right now it seems very dark. I'm asking you to send me to Congress and let's see the dawn again, because in 2022 we're taking back the House, we're taking back the Senate. Our best days are ahead of us, and I believe that because God put this planet, this country on this earth to continue to sustain and not dissolve. Please send me to Congress to help make sure that happens. I'm asking for your vote and your support. Thank you.
Thank you both very much. So again, we have an official timekeeper, Ms. Laura. And we're going to start with Mrs. Wright. In light of the past 15 months, during which we've navigated through a pandemic and a global supply chain disruption, what is the greatest threat to American industrial outlook, and how would you address this threat from a policy perspective?
Well, I think that our greatest threat has been demonstrated last year. We have a very overly high dependence on foreign supplies for our domestic supply chain. So I would look to reverse that. I would want to repatriate our manufacturing jobs from our American manufacturers who manufacture overseas. I would want to do that with tax incentives if we need to. I want to push for more America First policies to support that effort. And I think the biggest thing is we've got to push for our energy independence that we used to have. We need to return to that because that is also going to slow our supply chain and our distribution, within the United States. So thank you.
30 seconds just for clarification or any extra explanation.
The Biden administration is increasing the cost of production and transportation of everything we do here. Because of extremely high government spending, we also have an inflationary problem, and we have acts of war being committed against us by China, the likes of China and Russia, through cyber attacks on our means of production for meat and oil and gas production. Those are acts of war. Ask anybody. That's exactly what it is. So we have threats from within and without, and they need to be stopped. I'm done.
Thank you both. And we're going to move to the issue of immigration. And this is for you, Jake. And then we'll give Ms. Wright a chance for a 30-second clarification. What strategies do you have to disincentivize illegal immigration or incentivize legal immigration?
Well, by being here, that's an incentivization enough to come to the United States. Illegal immigration, I went to the border last week. It is as bad as they say. It's all due to the Biden administration because of guys like Brian Harrison in the back and what he did on the border to shut down the immigration issue. And the Trump administration, we shut it down. It doubled the first month that President Biden was in office because they said we're not going to process anybody who's coming across the border with kids 7 years or younger. So now you've got a trafficking problem and they're coming in illegally, not being processed and sent out into the country. That has got to stop. It is as bad as they say. I like what our state has done. I voted for $400 million every year plus $10 million a month to help Texas stop what's going on at the border. You're paying for that. You shouldn't have to. But we should have some more answers, and it's got to start with how Congress does this job of stopping the immigration, the illegal immigration at the border.
So what's happening at the border is a humanitarian crisis, it's an economic crisis, it's a national defense crisis. And the best way to address illegal immigration is to secure the border, complete the wall that President Trump started and President Biden has undone. And we need to enforce the laws we have today. That's what I would do, that's what I would push for every day, beginning with the first day I was elected. Thank you.
Thank you both. As we move on to healthcare, this is Ms. Wright, the 2021 version of Medicare for All came before the House in March. Do you see that gaining traction under the Biden administration? And what would your position be on Medicare for all and why? And how would that impact children?
Well, Ron and I have lived the healthcare world a lot in great depth for the last 30 plus years. So what I can tell you is I would not support Medicare for all. And as far as traction within the Biden administration on this issue, I don't know. So much of what they do now is messaging bills, and I suspect this is probably one of the same. But we can support it because we've already seen how this works, haven't we, with the Affordable Care Act. The government takeover of our entire healthcare system is a preposterous notion. We need to return to a patient, doctor-centered healthcare. We have the best health professionals in the world, hands down. And we need to let them work with the patients, and any insurance should be supportive of facilitating that. As far as for kids, I don't believe that Medicare for all for kids would be any better. I think parents should be in control of what happens to their kids, including with health care. Thank you.
What the Democrats want is nationalization of our health care. It's 1/8 of our economy. We have to put a stop to it. We need to go back to what we had before Obamacare, which should have been ruled unconstitutional, but it wasn't. And we need to try that again. In the Texas House, the Democrats tried to get Medicare for all, and we opposed that, and I will continue to do that. We already have good health care for our kids via CHIPS in the state of Texas. We need to go back to having the market run our health care industry instead of the government run it, because the only thing that the government can do is screw it up.
All right, this is for you, Jay, under Foreign Affairs. Between China, Russia, North Korea, and Iran, which country poses the greatest threat to the United States? And please describe why and what you would do to protect our interests.
That's a great question. And right now, China is the biggest threat facing us right now, but they're all part of the same group. They all coordinate. China, Iran, North Korea, they all coordinate with each other. Russia, they're working in concert with each other to break down this country. What do bullies do when they see somebody weak? They go after them. And this administration is seen as weak. When their number one problem is global warming, when the Department of Defense says that our number one threat facing us is climate change, you need to be very afraid because they're watching that. They know that. When changing man and woman is more important than combat effectiveness in our military, they're paying attention. That's why they're programmed on shutting down our meat industry, our oil and gas industry. Do you think they're not watching what's going on our electrical grid here in the state of Texas? They are all a threat, and we need to meet them strongly. We need to increase our defense spending. We need to increase our Navy spending. Bullies don't go up against somebody who's tough, and we need to show that. Thank you.
So the world is safer with a strong America leading from the front. Our biggest threat, hands down, though all of those are bad actors and a significant threat to us, the biggest threat is China. China threatens our economic system. They steal our intellectual property. They have a massive military, the biggest in the world, and they are intent. The Chinese Communist Party and Xi have committed publicly to expanding their outreach and their oversight and literally taking over as much of the world as they can and being the number one world dominant power. So I think that we should disincentivize overseas manufacturing and incentivize things here at home. Thank you.
Okay, this is for you, Mrs. Wright. Under finance, which I think we all, as taxpayers, appreciate this question. What are your thoughts on the amount of deficit spending the government has had in the last 18 months, and what future measure will be required to pay for this spending?
Well, I think there's no question that the amount of deficit spending we have and the size of the national debt is a travesty. It is reckless, and we cannot sustain this. We're barely coping right now with it. It is going to threaten our national security, and it is a significant vulnerability among foreign nations who hold our debt. So it's a simple answer. It's not a simple choice. We have to cut our spending. We have to be disciplined. I think the safest, the strongest, and the most meaningful thing we can do is return to a regular order of Congress where we actually create a budget. I think it was the mid-90s the last time we actually did a full budget through the committees where all members had access.
And that's exactly what I would push for, and that's what I would do.
In the state of Texas, we pay as we go, and we had to balance the budget. That's what we did this last session. In spite of COVID, we had a strong balance sheet because we opened up our state. Thank you, Governor. And thank you, local business owners, for doing what you do to keep this economy going. We were able to fund our schools completely. So keeping an open state is exceptionally important in keeping a balanced budget. We haven't had a balanced budget. We haven't had a budget in 20 years in Congress. And this is unsustainable. So we should return to pay as you go, and we need to have a budget in Congress. Thank you.
Under education, unlike most day-to-day district operations, which are funded through state and local dollars, special education is federally funded and often through a cumbersome process. Please share your thoughts with special education on increasing the dollars and streamlining the IDEA legislation and any other similar measures.
Well, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act is a cumbersome piece of legislation that meant, well, like most things that come from Washington, D.C. But the fact is that Congress promised to spend 40% of what everybody needs on special education, and they didn't. Now it's back down to about 20. In addition, in this state and in this nation, we have an increased number of kids year over year of those requiring special education. So thankfully, through the legislation that was passed through Congress a couple of months ago, we are going to see increased funds, but it needs to be more streamlined. And when you promise something, you need to deliver. Not much good comes out of Washington, D.C. This is something that's absolutely essential for our children, and it needs to be streamlined and improved. Thank you.
Educating our children is a high priority for me, and one of the things I would do is to tie the federal dollars for IDEA funding to kids. That gives a finite dollar amount to each school district, and they can plan for that. To reduce the red tape, I would push for and fight very hard for block grant funding for this effort to go to the schools. That would give the schools some certainty. They could get the money on the front end. Right now it's in a reimbursement state, so they have to do all the paperwork and then get their money back. So I would do the block grants to get the money up front.
Thank you. Ms. Wright? With real estate, there are many headlines reporting the current administration's desire to alter the 1031 exchange and capital gains tax codes. What are your thoughts on these proposed changes and their potential impact on a cross-section of real estate transactions?
Well, the proposed changes are couched in the vein of we have to make our wealthiest people pay their fair share of taxes. And that's what the 1031 would do. It would tax real estate, commercial real estate transactions in the interim. So if you sell property and then you reinvest it in something else, you pay taxes on the interim dollars rather than reinvesting within a set period of time. Capital gains would work the same way, so that impacts us directly when we sell our homes. These are just tax increases by fancy names. The bulk of the transactions are people in this room. That's who the bulk of the transactions are. So I wouldn't be supportive of it. I would be supportive of keeping it where it is to allow small business owners and commercial transactions to proceed as they are. That keeps the economy moving and keeps the transactional process going. And most importantly, for the capital gains tax, it keeps small businesses, farmers, and individual property owners in their homes, in their property, and keeping it within their families long term.
Since this legislation passed, many Americans have benefited from it. Farmers, small business people, small families, large families. It is a genuine benefit to our economy because real estate drives the economy. That's all you can say about it. Commercial real estate and home real estate, it drives the economy. That's a good indicator. That's the leading indicator of a strong economy. We can't touch this. It is absolutely abhorrent that the Biden administration would like to weaponize, once again, a policy because they don't think that it's fair. All they want is equity. So be careful when they start talking about equity because they're coming for your money, and it's got to stop. Thank you.
Thank you both. Now, these are the questions that were not presented to you as we're going to go through this cycle. Back under business. Businesses across the country have been handcuffed by a shortage of willing and able workers. How would you address this immediate need and what adjustments should be made to ensure that we don't create a similar shortfall in the future? Mr. Ellzey?
Well, the fact is that the federal government took your money and gave more of it to people who are choosing not to work than those who work. And that's a simple fact. And I've got some family members who own businesses or run businesses around here, and we think that June 26th is a little bit too late to cut off the benefits of unemployment for the people who are doing that. We got a massive crunch of labor shortages because the government is paying people more money to stay at home. That should have been a month ago. That is up to the states, but the fact is that the economy is booming where the states are open, and I'm proud of that. I'm proud of what we did here in Texas to open up our state. But we need to start cutting off that. That's your money, and it's just driving us further into debt. So when we talk about debts, we're running $1 trillion a month debt in this country. A budget of $1 trillion a year. That is unsustainable. We have to put a stop to that. This kind of spending only adds to that. It needs to come to a stop. Thank you.
So I would incentivize work again and let people get paid to go to work. We've knocked on thousands of doors and we've talked to hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people in small businesses across this district. And hands down, number one, without question, the biggest problem they have is they cannot find workers to come back to work. And it's because they're making more money to stay at home. And so for the lower pay scales, you can't blame them. They need the money. So I'm really pleased that the governor has stopped that money, and I would never support something like that in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, back to immigration. Could you please share your thoughts, Ms. Wright, on sanctuary cities and other similar local legislation present in the current immigration landscape, and what you believe the role of the local, state, and federal governments are for the issues of immigration?
Well, on immigration, I believe, and I continue to believe, and will fight for upholding the laws we have. It's not complicated and it's not rocket science. We have laws. A sanctuary city effectively says it doesn't matter what the compact of the states is with the United States to support the Constitution and behave as a state member of the United States. We're going to make our own rules. We're going to disregard the federal immigration rules. I won't support that. And I won't support anything that does it. I'm fine with what do they call it, defunding the sanctuary cities. I'm fine with that. I think that the laws are in place for a reason. We need to uphold the laws, and we need to stand strong to secure our border and secure the cities and the states within it.
In the state of Texas, the legislature decided if you're a city or not. You want to become a sanctuary city, revoke your charter. Enforce the laws that we have in the United States. There shall be no amnesty. We have legal immigration. Plenty of people are getting in line. Nobody should be able to cut in line. We should not be allowing what's going on with the border being such a mess. Human trafficking, terrorism, and drugs pouring through our border are destroying our country from inside. And the last thing we need are sanctuary cities. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Ellzey, small business is the backbone of the American economy. What will you do to help support the opportunity and success for domestic business, especially small business owners sitting here in this room?
The federal government is a large piece that only operates to provide jobs for people who are in government and take more of your money. Here in the state of Texas, we do pay as you go. We run a good, tight ship. We have strong businesses. That's why Texas and Florida are leading the nation. The business of the federal government should be interstate highways, protecting the United States, and ensuring that business owners have a decent regulatory environment with which to operate. But that's not what they do. They find new ways to spend money. They find blank checks to spend money on social programs and things that don't benefit the nation as a whole. They engage in numerous unconstitutional actions from a budgetary perspective that should not be allowed anymore. The first thing you go up to Washington, D.C. to say is no more spending. Because it's not even my kids that are going to have to be paying for this bill. It's my grandkids and your grandkids. Fiscal responsibility must come first, along with defense of our nation. Thank you.
In my view, the best thing the federal government can do for small businesses is get out of the way. I think that we should codify and make permanent the Trump tax cuts, particularly in the business area. I'm open to cutting some of the corporate tax rates even more. Right now, we've got some of the highest tax rates in the world. I want to codify the regulatory reforms that President Trump enacted, and I want to reduce the red tape and the regulatory burdens on small businesses, which in many times create more jobs just to address the paperwork. So I want the federal government out of their small business. Thanks.
This is from Mrs. Wright again. Please share your thoughts on school funding between charter schools and ISDs.
Well, I'm a big supporter of kids' education. I love the ISDs, and mostly, I think, in North Texas, but specifically in the 6th District. Ron's on the Education Committee, and I got to work with him a lot on a lot of the education issues within the district, and we have got awesome ISDs. Right now, the funding is per ISD, and I'm very supportive of keeping it that way. There is a role for charter schools. There is a parental choice. In some districts, there are really bad schools that kids can't get out of, and I don't think that kids ought to be burdened and penalized because of the zip code they grow up in, but I do not believe that should come at the expense of our ISD funding.
Well, this isn't a 30-second talk, but I do want to say this. STAR test needs to go away. The funding associated with the STAR test needs to go away. Every school district is different. I believe in local control. Independent school district knows who's going to school and what their needs are. Ennis is different than Midlothian, and it's different from Mansfield, Maine Pearl, Italy. They're all different. Funding should be based on the local needs of the school districts and not based on a test, because I have kids in the school district here, and I know when the STAR test is coming up. And you know why I know that? Because they're having to study to it. That's a shackle that we need to do away with. They need to do away with it at the state. We've worked on that, and we need to stay out of local school districts at the federal level. Thank you.
Thank you both. Now we're going to move on to some questions here from the audience. How do you propose and bridge a significant breach in Congress in order to better represent the American people and the Texans in particular, as opposed to just voting party lines?
Would you repeat the question?
How do you propose to bridge the significant breach in Congress in order to better represent the American people and Texans in particular, as opposed to just voting on party lines?
Well, as I've said, for 31 years, I've been under oath to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States. I'm American first, Texan second. And somewhere down the line is Republican or Democrat. That's not how we should be looking at things. In the Texas legislature, we accomplish a great many number of things in a very short amount of time because we come together as Texans first. That is a bipartisan way that we accomplish a great number of things in the state of Texas. That's why we have the Texas Bureau. However, there are people, forces outside who aim to do us harm. So when we can work together, that's fine. I'm an American first. We need to be thinking about America first. We need to make sure that we are strong as a country compared to other nations. If we are trying to be liked by foreign nations, we are putting ourselves at a disadvantage. In fact, that's what the Biden administration is doing right now, and they've even said so. Oh, we like to be liked. I don't care if we like to be liked. I'm here to protect you. That's what I've done my entire life. That's what Congress should be doing, and that's what this administration should be doing. Thank you.
So the bipartisan issue that doesn't seem to exist in Washington, it really doesn't exist very much in Washington. What the media would have you believe is that there's brawls in the hallway, never twain shall meet. But the truth of it is, outside of the leadership, there are a number of members who have like ideals and goals, who want to work together to accomplish things. Ron did that successfully. He's the only freshman in his class that got 3 bills passed and 2 signed into law. They were all bipartisan. I will absolutely work across the aisle where I can, where our principles and our goals align. It doesn't happen very often because, frankly, leadership doesn't get a lot of notoriety if they're complicit in that. But I'll do what I can.
Can you please tell us if you believe in term limits and how you would bring that to any kind of point of discussion in Congress?
I do believe in term limits. I don't believe that the House ought to only be there 6 years and the Senate ought to be there 12. If anything, I would reverse that. But I believe in term limits because the cost of running for these offices is outrageous, and people end up in office for more than 40 years sometimes and become the institution themselves. That doesn't help anybody. When you're there that long, you become, like I said, part of the institution, and power is the game at that point. So I would like term limits to have a constant turnover, and I have already signed the pledge. I will be happy to sign on the legislation and see where it goes. It's not likely to go anywhere anytime soon, but I will certainly work to get there.
I too signed the pledge she spoke of. Additionally, I promised to serve only 4 complete terms, which would not let me be eligible for a pension. This shouldn't be a career. It's not going to be my career. I have a job. I'm an airline pilot. This should be government service. We need to look at it that way, like we do in the state of Texas, where they're only paid $600 a month. In fact, I think if Washington, D.C. Approached their way of governing the way that we do here in Texas, we'd be a lot better off. Thank you.
So we're wrapping up the last 2 questions. What legislative actions can Congress take to combat cyber attacks against our nation's infrastructure, similar to what happened with the Colonial Pipeline?
Well, having been in the military for 20 years and been in the military when they stood up a cyber command, it actually exists. You're not going to know about it, and you're not going to know most of what goes on in cyber command. We have millions of attacks against everything from infrastructure to small businesses to government industry round the clock. So we already have a section of the Defense Department that does that every day. But like I said before, when we know who's accomplishing those attacks, technically that's an act of war. And I want y'all to think about that for a minute, because we know it's coming from China and Russia. But I also want to assure you that I'm sure back in some locked room, there's a whole bunch of smart folks like the mayor of Midlothian who are working very hard to defend our country against cyber attacks. But we should always be mindful of that, because that's asymmetric warfare. If you can't match us on the battlefield, and nobody can right now, they're going to go at us in ways they think that they can find out. And we need to constantly be finding ways to solidify our infrastructure so that doesn't happen. Thank you.
Well, I don't think that there's a way to stop the attempts at cyber attacks. And I don't think there's a way to make it bulletproof so that it can't happen. I know I've got every kind of malware thing on my phone and my computer, and we still get things from the house. You can't stop it. But what we can do is not open the door for it. And so we need to revisit all our foreign deals, particularly our Chinese technology. All the Chinese technology has malware and spyware in it. And we're foolish if we believe that it doesn't. And the countries that do business with China from here are subjected to that as well.
Thank you, Bev. Here's the last question. And Ms. Laura, I'm going to break the rules, if that's okay. I'd like to give both of you each a minute to answer this last question, but before I ask the question, I want to remind everybody here, don't forget the runoff election is on July 27th. Early voting will be July 19th through the 23rd. And Ms. Wright, if you're the first question here, why would a potential Democrat vote for you, and why should we choose you?
Why would a Democrat vote for me? I don't know. Good government. I usually don't fall down any of the lines that the Democrats have. But I am honest, I am accessible, and I will listen and try to get to yes to resolve whatever constituent issues there are. And why me? I've devoted my adult life to public service, whether I'm volunteering, I'm working within my church, I'm civically active, or working in constituent services. I work in the community that I'm asking you to represent, and I believe I can put all of that together with the political background that I've had within the Republican Party to be your voice, to be a strong voice for you in Washington. Come home, hear you out, go back and do it again, over and over and over. I know I can do it, I've done it here, and I'd love to be your voice in Washington. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate all of you.
My life has been about service to the United States of America. When I went into combat, I was off with an aircraft carrier Super Hornet. I didn't care who was next to me. We had only one thing in mind, and that was mission accomplishment. Black, white, whatever color, male or female, did not matter. What was our mission objective? Defending the United States of America. The divisiveness in our country cannot stand. The divisiveness in our party cannot stand. That's why I run positive campaigns where I speak only about my goals for the United States of America. for a better place to raise our kids, for better communities. It's that simple. It's about the people standing in front of me. So I'm not aiming to do anything in particular other than to promote my vision for what brighter days are ahead. I'm a Reagan Republican. I believe that the brighter days are ahead. It's going to get a little bit darker first, but the dawn's coming. And I appreciate your vote on July 27th. Thank you.
We are blessed to have two amazing candidates here today. And this concludes our question and answer. So please join me in thanking both of them in their time.
Thank you, Ian, very, very much. Have you all ever seen a harder format? I mean, our committee was like, okay, how do we get a whole bunch of questions answered, but keep it tight? So I think the candidates may be able to stay for a few minutes if any of your questions weren't answered. Let me get back on my script so I can make sure that I get you out of here promptly. Okay. She mentioned, don't forget the runoff election will be held on July 27th. Early voting is usually here at the conference center, the 19th to the 23rd. And now I do want to tell you that if you can, mark your calendars. Next month, we'll have the annual awards party on Saturday, the 29th. That'll be at Casaro Winery. Now, this is a party we do not charge our members to come to this party. And then where is it going to be? Casaro Winery. So y'all will all be there, right? Oh, okay, it says Saturday in my script. That's my mistake. That's what I get. I need a better assistant, right? Okay, and then the other thing I want you to be aware of is, no, that was me. I'm taking the criticism for that. Typing. Leadership in Luncheon will kick off its 26th year in August. If you'd like to be a part of the class of 22, please call the Chamber for an application. Thanks once again to our presenting sponsor, the Ray Foundation, former State Representative John Wright and his wife for being our presenting sponsor. Our VIP community partners were the law firm of Rick Wilhelm, Lafarge Holcim, Access Self-Storage, and Burdell. And our corporate sponsor was Caliber Voice and Data. Thank you all for attending today. Thank you to the two candidates for being here with us. And we'll see you all at Casaro Winery for the Chamber Awards Party next month. Have a great day.